Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Imani Sawari. I do have a monthly newsletter, a bi-monthly newsletter. It was monthly at one point. Now it is bi-monthly. This is actually just a clipping from the front cover of it to be on the mailing list. And so that is what the newsletter looks like. If you're interested, here's a full one. Boom, 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 boom. If you're interested in getting your loved one on the mailing list, just go to sawarimedia.press. Click on our subscribers love us. You can fill out that form. There's no cost at all. For those who don't know about the Good Time campaign at all, or for folks who participated in it a few years back or most recently last year, this is the video for you. Why you should watch this video, not only because I'm going more in depth, but I'm going to reveal some things that I noticed when I was doing the campaign. I directed the campaign in 2019, and patterns that I saw when consulting the campaign in this past year. So if you guys want that inside scoop, this video could be helpful. And I will end with some really fun next steps and ways that you can plug in right now. And if folks want to follow along, you certainly can. So if you go to sawarime.org, you can scroll down. We are in over 200 facilities and we have over 1,000 subscriptions. If you scroll past all of that, then you'll see the most recent article that was posted is a brief history on the movement to repeal truth in sentencing in Michigan. How did this even become a thing? There's a handful of states out of the 50 that don't allow people in prison to earn time for anything while they're incarcerated. So different states have different policies. Some folks feel that earned time off for good behavior is a great qualifier. Some states, some governments have said earned time off for college courses being taken is a great incentive. Some folks feel that earned time off for employment, extended employment, especially for unpaid or low below minimum wages, earning some time towards release is a good qualifier. And so it really depends on the state what the policy is. However, in our state, there is no policy that covers that if you were incarcerated in state prison. Now the kink with it is, if you are in a county jail, then you can earn time off your sentence. If you are in a federal prison, then you can earn time off of your sentence. And even more interestingly and confusingly, if you were incarcerated in a state prison prior to 1998, then you can earn time off. So all of these intricate loopholes and this value of life really being dependent on what jurisdiction you were incarcerated under, it should just be across the board. And so that's the problem that we're tackling. Restoring some sense of earned time off in Michigan State Prison is the solution, but how can that be done? So there have been a lot of pathways towards that. The first pathway is through a introduction of a bill. My husband's on the way. He's going to bring me food. Watch. Get you a husband like that. Oh my gosh, this water is amazing. Alrighty. Now how we're working towards the solution. There are two legal pathways towards correcting this injustice. The first one is the proposal by representatives for a bill. Proposing it through the representatives, proposing it through the legislature. And we became aware of this in 2018. The first bill that we saw around this issue was introduced by Democratic Representative David LaCran in partnership, a bipartisan bill, which is amazing, in partnership with Martin Hurelak, which was a Republican representative. But these two people came together on a bipartisan bill to say that people who are incarcerated in the state of Michigan should have access to earned time off. It was introduced to the Law and Justice Committee, which was chaired by Republican Representative Clint Kesto at the time. And because it was introduced in that committee, and under a representative that didn't view it as a priority, it never made it out of committee. And this is the first con for introducing a bill through our state representatives, is that it has to be introduced to a committee and passed through the committee before it can make it to the floor. That all the representatives can vote on. And then after it makes it on the floor that all the representatives can vote on, and the committee, only a select group of reps who are involved in that committee. It might be up to a dozen reps. And then it gets on the floor, and now it's the whole House. And then it goes on to the Senate side and goes through that same process before it goes onto the governor's desk. And that's the first con. There's so many different layers. So if the committee chair doesn't think it's a priority, then it's not going to make it out of the committee. And so that was the biggest problem. Clint Kesto would not hear the bill. We continually showed up at his coffee hours. We sent emails, hundreds of emails to Clint Kesto, and he did not respond. So that was the problem with that bill. I want to just tell you guys why it's important that we have earned credits in our prisons. The first is for balance. I already talked about how we have it on the county jail system, we have it on the federal system, and then dozens and dozens of states have it. And so to have balance across the board in our correctional systems would be really important to allow for a sense of rehabilitation and restoration for all people who suffer from incarceration in our state. The second one is to help quell environments that incite violence. So if folks have nothing to lose, and people might consider people in prison having absolutely nothing to lose, there's still time. There's your future time that now you're juggling with. So instead of now having nothing to lose, you might rethink an incident that might lead to violence while you're incarcerated. You might rethink how you respond to violence while you're incarcerated with this policy in place as an incentive for better behavior. And then the third thing, to reduce long-term sentences. Michigan has the longest average time served in the country. And so in order to not hold the gold medal for that, we need to put this system in place to also not just that stat, but thinking about the individual lives of people who are impacted by incarceration. There are some long-term costs when it comes to overcrowding, like what we saw with the spread of illness and disease just this past years. And then also when it comes to families, connections, jobs, loved ones. People are losing their loved ones and they're not getting the opportunity to see them ever again. And these are people who are incarcerated as minors and who have decades of time still to go. We want to insert some sense of hope that gives people the motivation to want to change. And this is the second pathway. So we've got introduction of bill by Congress, but we also could initiate legislation through the people. And so people could initiate legislation through an initiative petition. And Michigan has a way for people to initiate legislation around the legislator. So instead of trying to convince a legislature to prioritize a bill, get it through a committee, get it through the floor, get it through the other side of Congress, and repeat that process before getting it onto the governor's desk, this would allow for citizens to collect at least, there's a minimum to the amount of signatures that you would need in order for the initiative to be considered for being on the ballot for the people to vote on. And so the initiative would collect over the past few years. It's been 340 some thousand signatures that have to be valid, that have to be from registered voters on the initiative. So this happened in 2019. The initiative to repeal truth in sentencing was called the Michigan Prisoner Rehabilitation Credit Act. And this initiative was actually written by people who were incarcerated in Michigan's Department of Corrections. It was proposed to the citizens, which included myself. Citizens made sure that the bill included a few key things: retroactivity, inclusivity, which meant that the bill, when the bill went in place, that it would have an effect not only that day forward, but from the beginning of that person's sentence. So they will be able to calculate their time served based upon the time that they've already served and not just starting on the day. The second is inclusivity. So we wanted to include not only good behavior, but also credits for folks who were taking college courses, who were employed dutifully in the prison, and also folks who suffered from mental illness who might not be able to seek employment or demonstrate what normalized good behavior is. That was in 2019. Unfortunately, that initial petition did not collect the 300,000 plus signatures needed for the threshold by the summer of 2020 that the signatures was due. Now, we all know what happened in between when the signatures, when the signature collection canvassing time began, fall of 2019, and when the signatures reduced summer. I was involved in a federal lawsuit suing the state for citizens' inability to collect signatures in time for the deadline. And it really wasn't for the citizens' inability, but for the state's lack of infrastructure to support folks who were canvassing during that time, folks who had petitions that were approved by the Board of Elections to canvass. But everything changed. We hoped that maybe there would be some executive order that allowed online signatures, or just the threshold would be lower, or that the date would be extended, something that would allow us to continue to collect signatures and use, or even just use the ones, maybe take an average of the ones that have been collected for the different initiatives that we were alongside that year. So it was a lot. Different candidates that were running for office. There were so many different initiatives that were impacted. And as a last-ditch effort to not just, you know, allow everything to melt away because of these lockdown restrictions, I allowed people in prison to write a suit in my name. And I signed it. And then it went to the courts. And it went all the way up to the federal level. I paid for an attorney out of pocket. There was no budget for collecting signatures and printing sheets, let alone a federal court case. I was willing to do anything. I was willing to put my neck on the line for the people, and I did. And literally, I felt the blade up against my neck, y'all. And it was crazy because the same exact conditions that forced us to try to use the court system, to try to use the judiciary system to bolster why we should get our initiative on the ballot, were the exact same conditions that were used to delegitimize us. I mean, it was just crazy. I can make a video more in depth on it. I would appreciate if folks left like really specific questions under this video. If you guys want that, like this video. Get this video to 100 likes. And at 100 likes, then I'll do a part 2 and go more in depth in that. But you guys might not need that or care. We're moving forward. So let me talk about the second initiative petition, and then we will get into the next steps. So those are the pros. Well, those are the cons. Let me go into a pro. One pro is that the people can put together law and bypass the legislature. So I said that. That's the pro of the initiative petition process. So even though we weren't able to do it summer 2020, thankfully Michigan United picked this bill up. A regional, statewide organization with paid staff. Like, I was so excited. So they took that same language. So Wired Media provided them with as many contacts as we have from 2019. And we hit the ground running. So I just want to identify, I'm going to identify 3 of the biggest patterns that I saw. 3 of the biggest patterns that I saw that I think if we don't address this and we take up this petition initiative again, we will be shooting ourselves in the foot. We're not going to have any more success than we've had in the past. And we're building momentum, but we want to see this momentum come into fruition, into policy. And so the first thing that I'll say is the lack of promotion before canvassing. So there's a period of time that canvassing must happen, 180 days before the submission of the petition itself to the Board of State Canvassers. In simple terms, no signature can be more than 180 days old. Sometimes you can apply for an extension, but those signatures need to be reviewed and validated in time for an approval to come in order for the ballots. So the primary election is happening in the summer, and then you've got the general in November, which is where those ballot petitions are going to be voted on. It's so much. I hope that I'm explaining this well enough. Anyways, that canvassing period cannot be the sole period of education. We have to start educating people in advance of the canvassing period, the year before. And so that's why I'm really excited about the next steps for this initiative itself. Second thing that I noticed is that people, when they get excited about this petition, they are very inquisitive, which is great. But the inquiries are always, how many signatures do we have? How many signatures do we have? People always want to know, how many signatures do we have now? And then at that point, they determine how committed they are. No, no, no. Stop. I want people not to ask that question until like a month before the deadline. Why? Because instead of using resources to gather more signatures, we are calling the director of campaigns. We're calling the administrative folks who are trying to scan sheets, create language, put together social media toolkits, and we're re-averting their focus to look through and see how many signatures we have. That question isn't even important right now. Ask yourself how many signatures you've collected, how many petition sheets you've turned in. Ask your family that question. How many have you collected? If you don't have a preference to the question with how many signatures and sheets you've put in, I'm not answering it. Someone else might. I'm not directing the campaign anymore, so you could ask someone else and they might tell you an actual number. But to be honest, there is no actual number. There's no concrete number that we could give you, especially not 2 weeks in. Especially not 2 months in. Like, that's just the halfway point. No, I'm not in prison, so I don't know. But like, just knowing the answer to that question gives